Hello, hello, and welcome to another episode of Glorious Life on Wheels. This is part 2 of how I came to be a mother for the first time at the age of 50. If you haven't seen the first video, go back and watch part 1 because it really gives the background and context for what I'm going to be saying in this video. Where we left in part 1 was after I had gone up to the Bay Area, driven up there to pick up the child that I was going to adopt, who previously the biological mom had planned to terminate the pregnancy, but after I stepped in and said I would adopt the child, had decided not to terminate the pregnancy. Well, I was up in the Bay Area to pick up the child and bring her home to start our life together. And where I left off again in the video was when the biological mom had told me that she changed her mind and she wanted to keep the baby. As I told you in that video, I had really mixed emotions. On the one hand, I was joyful because I was happy that this child was getting had their life saved, that they were able to have a life. On the other hand, I was a little bit sad, or actually a lot sad, because I had been primed. I had been ready. God had been preparing my heart, opening it up to take this child in. And now, after all these months of preparation, I left empty-handed without the child, without the baby. So that was sadness, but even mingled in there was a third emotion. And among the sadness and the joy was a tiny bit of relief. Because I thought, wow, this is going to be quite a journey, taking care of a child with Down syndrome. And children with Down syndrome often have serious medical conditions. So part of me I think the smallest part of me in all of this was relieved, but there was a bit of relief, I have to say, because deep down I still had some doubts. Even though I had faith that God knew what he was doing, even when you have faith, in the midst of your faith, there still can be a little bit of doubt. So I went back home to San Diego, not really knowing how to feel. I was just a bundle of different emotions. But I eventually settled back into my life, went on planning to continue the rest of my life without being a mom. Meanwhile, I'm driving a minivan. That was not something I ever planned to be driving, at least not at that stage of my life. I was more a sports car kind of girl, but I'm now driving around in this minivan. And I have a crib and all these clothes, and I decided, well, I'm just going to, donate all this stuff, but I hadn't gotten around to it yet. Before I go any further, let me just say this. In the first video, I talked about how God works in mysterious ways, and how his paths aren't always straight. Well, what is coming up next is such a prime example of that. And I realized, I thought God was preparing me and opening up my heart to take in my renter's unborn grandbaby once it was born. And that wasn't what he was doing at all. Now, he was saving this child's life, and I had a small role in doing that. But what he was really doing was preparing me for the child that I would eventually become mother to. Now, let me just give you an example of something. When a farmer goes to plant a crop, they don't just go in the field and start dropping seeds helter-skelter in any random way. They prepare the field. They sow the field. They prepare the soil. They sometimes even fertilize it. They water it. They get it all ready so when they drop those seeds, the ground is going to be ready to yield a harvest. Well, that's what God was doing with me, with the first baby. He was preparing the soil of my heart to take a child and to mother an infant. But he was also, and if you listen to the first video, you understand this more, he was also preparing my heart to not just take a child and mother a child, but to mother a special needs child. One that could at times be extremely challenging. And he was getting my heart ready to meet that tremendous challenge. Not knowing that God was far from finished with me, I went back to the groove of my normal life. I had, accepted the fact I wasn't going to be adopting this baby, and I was not going to be mothering a child. Well, lo and behold, God had a different plan. In fact, he had the plan that he had all along. He was just going on to part 2 of his plan. I get a phone call, and in the phone call, I'm told that my niece, who has special needs, had given birth to a baby. And my niece has to have a lot of assistance, so she's not capable of raising a baby or a child. And the father, I'm not even going to go into his history, he was not capable either. So as I'm sitting there, after I hung up from that phone call, I'm just pondering, what is the likelihood this would happen, that there would be 2 different babies in my life that I might have some connection with or have some impact on their future. And the more I thought about it, the more I thought, I cannot leave my great niece in foster care. So I adopted her. It was kind of a long process. The social worker who I originally called and told that I wanted to adopt, first of all, she didn't like the idea that I was a single parent. She didn't like the idea that I was 50. She never even recorded that I had called and said that I wanted to adopt the child, or that I wanted to adopt my great niece. So 6 weeks passed, I hadn't heard anything from social services, and I called only to find this out. But anyhow, it's a long, long story, and, maybe I can share other parts of it at a different time. But God knew exactly what he was doing. He knew that I was a fighter, and he knew that this child was going to need someone to stand in the gap and fight for her. Fight for her at the school district when they didn't want to provide services. They didn't even think she needed services originally. Well, that was soon proven to be ridiculous. But I cannot tell you, fighting social services, fighting the school district, every single agency, even regional center that I've come in contact with that provides services for her, I have had to battle. But every step of the way, God has been there for us, providing and sustaining us. I'm going to end this video with a little story that may seem really insignificant to you. But when you're in the midst of something and you're overwhelmed, even the smallest thing, the smallest bit of encouragement can give you the motivation and give you just the boost that you need to keep going. And that's what happened here. The night before my first day back at work, after bringing baby Jay home, it was a night I'll never forget. All night that night, for some reason, she screamed. Now, we had made an adjustment, I thought, or somewhat of an adjustment. But that night, she screamed the entire night. I thought, okay, if I could just get her calmed down and I can maybe get 6 hours sleep, then 5 hours, then 3 hours. I'm looking at the clock, and I had to go to work that day. My first day back, I had some things going on I could not avoid. I had to go into work. And I got down to, if I could just get an hour's sleep, just 30 minutes sleep. Well, I got no sleep. So by the time I had dropped her off at the prearranged child care worker who had a child care in her home, and Jessica was one of only 1 and sometimes 2 children that she was caring for, I was exhausted. I was drained. I was thinking, going back, revisiting, Was this a good idea? Am I making a mistake? Do I need to change my mind? I mean, all these things are going through my mind. I'm so tired. I go into work, and everyone at my job knew on my first day back that what had happened. They'd known, or rather they knew that I had Jay and that, I was adopting her. And they knew, that this is my first day back to work. And they're all coming in my office. Well, how's it going? What's going on? What's it like being a mom the first time, at 50, blah, blah, blah. And I was so exhausted. I couldn't even talk to them. But that morning when I had dropped Jay off, the childcare worker had told me, I'm going to need a playpen, and I need it tomorrow. And I'm like, oh, gosh. So I'm already thinking, okay, I got to stop by. I got to get a playpen. I know it sounds like such a little thing, but when you're already overwhelmed, even a drop on a glass that's about to pour over is enough to make it go over the edge, okay? And I was at that point, even one more drop was going to make me go over the edge. Well, one of my coworkers who came in, and we didn't talk all that much, but we were friendly, she's saying, well, how's it going? How's it going? I was telling her, oh, I got to stop and get a playpen. Now, this is someone who had no young children, and she didn't have any grandchildren. Her kids are all older. And she says to me, oh, you need a playpen? I've got a playpen in my car. And then she says, you can have it. And I'm thinking, why would she have a playpen? And then she explains that she collects things for this center where she donates stuff for parents, for single moms. And she happened to have a playpen that day that she was going to donate. So we're walking out to her car, or we're exiting the building, and she said, well, it's pretty heavy. It's probably going to take both of us to carry it. And I'm thinking, okay, well, now this parking lot is gigantic. I mean, it's huge. There must be enough for hundreds of people to park in this parking lot. And I'm thinking, okay, well, we'll just go over to her car, get the playpen, and then we'll walk over to my car. And it may be a little walk, but we'll manage. So she says, well, where are you parked? And I point to where I am, and she goes, oh my, I'm parked right next to you. Now, I know this sounds dumb, but in my mind, and I still believe it, this was God saying, I am going to provide your needs for this child before you even know you need them. And I'm going to tell you, that's exactly what he did. At every step of the way, he had people there who were providing for us. He had things ready in place before I even found out that there was a need. He already had it filled. So let me just say this to you. It may seem like you're on a journey that's unsurmountable, that God has abandoned you, but I'm telling you, he has not. And through this journey with Jay, I have learned that over and over and over again. So I'm just hoping that this can be an encouragement to someone who's going through something, that he's already got it figured out. And he may not be taking you on this journey in a straight linear line like we're programmed to think. There may be a lot of curves and, a lot of bumpy roads, but he knows what he's doing. And I just want to say that to you. But anyhow, that's the end of my story of how I came to be a mom at 50 for the first time. If you'd like to hear some more of my story time tales, let me know in the comments, because I tell you, I've got a few, including one when I was almost put in jail in a foreign country and I was innocent. But anyhow, let me know if you've had some experiences where God has shown up strong for you when you thought he had abandoned you. Meanwhile, may your journeys be filled with joy and blessings. I love each and every one of you. And come on over and join us every Saturday at 3 p.m. Pacific Standard Time for the greatest group of people you'll ever want to meet online, Globies, for my Glow Live every Saturday. And stay tuned, because you know what? I'm going to finally give you a tour of this minivan that's getting ready to go to another home, because I have a different vehicle. So stay tuned for lots of interesting content coming up.